Hello and good evening, everyone. So I hope that all of you are doing good. I am Vishal Salsekar, and today we are going to start a new initiative with respect to coverage of the news today from the side of faculties, right? So basically, this is going to be an interactive session with respect to discussion on the news today on a daily basis, right? So today we are going to discuss the news today of 22nd and 23rd of June. Now, briefly talking about the news today. So, on a daily basis, you might be reading your own newspaper, right? But one limitation when it comes to the newspaper, that the newspaper might be covering on one specific aspect, or maybe it might be having certain limited coverage about that newspaper wala thing only. But apart from that, also there are certain kind of news which might be there in the All India Radio, some things extra from BIB, certain thing extra from certain kind of important ministry websites, and a lot of other resources and other aspects that may be covered from different other newspapers. So in order to simplify your preparation from the perspective of examination, we are going to cover this particular news today in detail, which is going to give a comprehensive idea about all these kind of things, right? But this have to be referred along with the newspaper. So in today's segment, we are going to discuss these particular news. So in the main news segment, we are going to discuss the articles like rising manosphere, undermining the gender equality, which is basically an observation of UN women, right? Then Iran said to close the Strait of Hormuz. We are going to see that what kind of repercussions that might be causing in the Middle East and in general in the world scenario. Then there is an article about UK Parliament's assisted dying bill, which is for the terminally ill patients, right? Then China, Pakistan, and Bangladesh held a trilateral meeting. And lastly, with respect to the main news, is the political financing in India, rising cost, falling in transparency. Apart from that, these are the quick updates. Those we are going to discuss quickly in the end. So let's start the discussion of the first news, which is rising manosphere, undermining the gender equality. So basically, what is manosphere? I'm very sure that you might have heard of this particular term directly or indirectly, or sometimes we come across the influence of this particular term also. Basically, what is manosphere? So you might have heard of social media influencer or many such kind of personalities or self-proclaimed certain kind of like trainers, those who are talking about that the manhood is in crisis, or basically whatever we are seeing in the form of rising feminism that is going to create certain kind of issues for the existence of men. So basically whatever these kind of narrow interest which is self-centered by certain celebrities or self-proclaimed celebrities, this comes under the ambit of manosphere. So basically, this particular term is an umbrella term for the online communities that have increasingly promoted the narrow and the aggressive definitions of what it means to be a man. Basically, what they are trying to do, they are trying to create their own interest with respect to creating certain kind of fear mongering, and basically all these kind of things are a important issue with respect to the gender equality as well as the rights of women in the public sphere, right? So basically this manosphere is this particular term which is talking about the rights of men, but not in the broader term, but in a very narrower aspect, which is talking about their endangerment, right? So now what UN women have observed that rising manosphere is a serious threat to the gender equality. Because don't you think so that if in any specific case, if all the rights of women are being undermined just by trying to propagate the men's view, isn't that going to create certain kind of issues with respect to gender equality? And this is what the UN women have highlighted. So there is a data that more than 5.5 billion people online connected through the internet also being used to spread the hate, abuse, and misogyny. What is this? Basically, the internet is a connecting media, right? So this is the magnitude. 5.5 billion people are connected online. Now that is being utilized on the positive note also, basically to propagate the education, to propagate the spread of the message for the love and the well-being of each and everyone, right? But on the other hand, it is also being used to spread the hate, abuse, and misogyny. And when it comes to the specific gendered aspect, the women are the worst sufferer of this. So basically the manosphere is creating or weaponizing the digital platforms by spreading the hate, sexist ideologies, and also reinforcing the deep gendered biases. Right. Now, there are certain specific reasons that we are going to talk about that why there has been a rise of the manosphere in the society. So you might be also seeing certain kind of like scrolling of the videos on the Instagram. Now, whatever videos you are spending certain more time, comparatively, those videos are coming on your feed again and again. Why it is happening? Because this is of the social media algorithm, the way they are trying to catch up upon what you are interested in, what is your thought process, what is your ideology, and those particular videos are being served to you. Now this is also one of the reason with respect to the rise of the manosphere. So basically the social media algorithms, what they do, they tend to assess that what is your interest zone, and then they amplify, and those particular things are served to you in a prioritized manner. This is one such reason behind the rise of the manosphere. Another reason is about the digital anonymity. Now whenever you are seeing certain kind of digital content, generally and many a times it happens that you are not at all aware regarding the creator of that particular content. Yes, there are certain anonymous names also, and sometimes we do not even know who is the originator of those particular reels and the kind of videos that we are seeing. So this anonymity is also giving the weapon in the hands of those who are trying to serve their narrow interest by propagating these kind of biases or these kind of remarks and views against the women. So this is basically regarding the digital anonymity. Next is about the need for the validation. Generally, the kind of society we are living, the people are getting more disconnected from the society. Previously, the kind of interaction that used to be there in the society, now it is going on through the social media. So the online presence is more, but the offline presence have been reduced over a period of time, and this is creating certain kind of fear of missing out related issue, right? And that needs validation. If some influencer comes and says ki nahi, you are not the only one who is facing this kind of difficulty, there are many men. So basically you are also trying to think, yes, there might be the chances then that these are the issues that are being faced by the community in general, but you will not be able to get to know about this particular thing, that this is being served to you in order to shape your mind or shape your thought process. So this is basically need for the validation, which is coming from the social isolation. And then about the masculinity influencers, you might have seen a lot of maybe gym videos or maybe certain kind of inspiring videos where you are trying to glorify the men specific thing. There is no harm in that, but if you are doing on the task of the women related aspect, means you are providing the contradiction to the equality that is being sought by the community, right? In that particular case, this masculinity influencer also tries to create certain case for doing more and more inequality or inequality, right? So basically these are the reasons behind the rising of the manosphere. Now what is the impact of this? So when we talk about the impact, first, basically if there are certain kind of trolls, certain kind of, like we can say, shaming or certain kind of sexist remarks that are going to be put against some community, don't you think so there will be reduced safety for the women? And when we talk about the digital spaces, 5.5 billion people, so it is going to create a lot of difficulty. This was observed in 2014-15 when this gamergate, which was a kind of like harassing tool, it became a harassing tool. It was an informal community where the people came together anonymously with the hashtag Gamergate, and they tried to troll, they tried to put a lot of sensitive information about women in the public domain to create certain propaganda. So this is one of the most important impact. Other is about undermining gender equality. This is very obvious that if you are trying to propagate the views of the dominant community, obviously there will be undermining of the gender equality you are going to face. Next is about the increased instances of harassment. Now harassment, it is both offline as well as online, means the digital as well as in the public harassment. Don't you think so? If there is a personality whose harassment is being done in the online mode, don't you think so that particular personality might also be susceptible to face certain kind of issues and troll even in the offline and in the physical mode also? So that is the increased instances of harassment, and we are seeing this particular things in the community. And then reduced participation. Now After all these three things, now don't you think so, if there will be these kind of issues that are being imposed upon the women, don't you think so their participation is going to get reduced? When we are talking about the political sphere, we are talking that we need to increase the representation of women in the parliament. But on the other hand, if we are trolling the women leaders, if we are trolling the social activists, then don't you think so this is going to create the reduced participation in the public sphere? So basically, these are the impacts that are going to be there. Now, to counter these impacts, there are certain initiatives. First is the Beijing platform for the action. Basically, this particular action plan talks about creating the kind of sphere where there will be no such kind of stereotypes against the women. So you will be providing the equal platform for the women for all the aspects. Then making all spaces safe initiative, which is basically the initiative of UNFPA, which is talking about removing any kind of violence against the women, including the physical violence. Next is EU's Digital Services Act, which is also talking about with respect to the digital platform related violence or the online violence or online subject of certain kind of vulnerability that the women may face. Now, when we talk about India specific aspect, Indecent Representation of Women Prohibition Act, where there will be any kind of video, any kind of media which is providing hamper to the dignity of the women, that have to be taken down. IT rules 2021 talks about that within 24 hours of the complaint, that particular video or media have to be taken down. Lastly, the Digital Shakti campaign, which is basically spreading the awareness about the digital literacy and digital awareness, specifically in the women related section. So in this particular article, we have discussed the entire spectrum of the manosphere. Now, basically from the examination perspective, this topic can become very important, and even not as a topic, there are a lot of examples that you can incorporate directly in your answer in order to improve the status of women in the society. Next article we are going to discuss is the United States Operation Midnight Hammer, which is prompting Iran to close the Strait of Hormuz. Now, what is this Operation Midnight Hammer? It is an operation which is being done by the United States, where the United States deployed its B-2 bomber on the Iran, which have created destruction on prominently 3 sites within the Iran. These sites are Fordo, Natanz, and the Isfahan within the Iran. Now, all these 3 sites have one commonality, that they are related with the uranium, either supply, uranium enrichment, or uranium related certain production facilities, right? So now with respect to this Midnight Hammer, first thing is about like what is this particular operation. Next thing is about what specific mechanism have been used. So there were B-2 Spirit bombers that were deployed. So it was one of the first time where these particular bombers were used with this kind of massive bombing. So basically the bombs that were used were the massive ordnance penetrator, which had, now this data is not that important, right? Now, apart from that, there are other bombs like the GBU-57 that was used. And apart from that, there were missiles like Tomahawk that was used by the United States. Now, this is a escalation which will be going on in the subsequent days, and the time in the future we will get to see that how Iran is going to retaliate, because one such retaliation that is coming from the side of Iran, that Iran is prompting to close the Strait of Hormuz. So this is very, very important for our understanding from the examination perspective. Now, if it is going to close the Strait of Hormuz, we should be having an idea about what is Strait of Hormuz, right? So basically, Strait of Hormuz is a narrow strait which is connecting the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and then further to the Arabian Sea. Now, this is a strait which is connecting two water bodies. Now, what are the water bodies? Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, and through that, the Arabian Sea. Now, on the one side, it is the Iran, on the other side, it is UAE and also the Oman, the slight tip of Oman, which is there in this particular region. Now, just try to imagine through the map that is it the Iran which is only country in this particular Gulf region? No. There is even Kuwait, there is even Iraq, there is even Saudi Arabia, there is Bahrain, there is Qatar, there is UAE. There are many other countries. For example, the Oman is there. Now, point simply here is that if Iran closes this particular Strait of Hormuz in that particular case, and this is not straight, this is Strait, S-T-R-A-I-T. Okay, this is a misprinting. So basically, if this is being closed in this particular case, don't you think so? The export from the side of all these countries is also going to get impacted. So basically, you have to have an idea about through the commonsensical manner that yes, all these things are going to get impacted if this strait is being stopped or put to a close by the country like Iran. This is going to create a difficult situation for the entire world. Now, these are the locations that were hit by the United States. It is Isfahan, which is the Iran's main uranium conversion plant. This is Fordo, which is the Iran's most critical nuclear site. Then Natanz, which is the largest uranium enrichment site. Just the location is important. No need to go into the further details of the same, because UPSC has the tendency to ask the location and which particular country it is located. Previously also UPSC had asked the questions about the Middle Eastern region like this. So basically it is spanning around like 167 kilometer, but the narrowest strip is the 33 kilometer, which is easy to plug or easy to close by the Iran, right? Now, right now, this is not formal announcement because Parliament have approved, but right now there is National Security Council that is yet to approve formally. Once that is being approved by them, this will be the Iran's formal policy to close the Strait of Hormuz. So we will see further if there are any kind of further developments. Now, what will be the implication of this particular closure? Now, can you see in this particular map, if this is being closed, the countries which are the major producer of oil, all these kind of oil will be exported to different countries across the globe, and this is the major region. So basically this is going to create a difficult scenario for the world in order to get the oil from the Persian Gulf region. So first is the impact on the global energy security. So around, it is said that around 20% of the oil and natural gas supply which is being produced in this particular Persian Gulf region is going to get impacted if there is a closure on the Strait of Hormuz. Next is the strategic importance. Now, it's not only Iran which is the country situated over here, it is for all the other countries. Now, apart from oil also, in order to access the sea, these particular countries are dependent on the Persian Gulf. So this particular Gulf is important, and even for the rest of the world. For example, India, if India have to do the trading with this particular region, so the Gulf countries ke saath trade is going to get through this particular Strait of Hormuz. So it is also going to impact the trade. So basically, with respect to the kind of strategy from the economy perspective, from the defense perspective, from many other perspective, it is going to create the difficulty for many countries. Now, inflation risk. Now, see, first and second are directly related to third. How? Because if there will be costly oil, if the Iran will close the Strait of Hormuz, in that particular case, there will be reduction of the supply of the oil from this particular region. That means global reduction will be there as far as the supply of oil and natural gas. And then for the transportation, for the energy, for different other productions, there will be lack of supply of the oil and natural gas. And in that particular case, there will be, when there is scarcity of the supply, but the demand is more, it is going to create a lot of inflation related aspect across the globe. Now, when we talk specifically from the perspective of India, the first thing, again, it is for the energy security of India, because it is a well stated fact that roughly 85% of India's oil and natural gas security is dependent upon the different countries of the world. Though we are more dependent right now on the countries like Russia, and we are not that much procuring the oil and natural gas from the Iran, but access to this particular region is important for India, because India is taking oil from Saudi Arabia, India is taking oil from different other countries which are there in this particular region, including Iraq, etc. So base, and also for LNG, there is Kuwait. So basically, in that particular context, 40% of India's oil and 50% of the natural gas imports are going to get strained because of this kind of closure, if that will be there. Next is about the trade deficit. Now, related to this, if the oil and natural gas are coming at a costlier price, because India is dependent, roughly 85% of dependency is there on the import. Now, in that particular case, this creates a lot of trade deficit where we are going to get import comparatively at a costlier price. So in that case, it is going to increase the trade deficit. Next is about the economic risk, because India is talking about the internationalization of rupee. Now, if the India is a lot dependent upon the oil, and that oil is also coming at a costlier rate, it is going to weaken the Indian rupee and also the demand of rupee in the global spectrum, right? So this is about the Strait of Hormuz. Now we will see in the subsequent lectures that what will be the future of this, because right now it is not officially stopped, right? It is done by Parliament, but let's see what further happens. Next, third article, which is about the UK House of Commons approves the terminally ill adults end of life bill, which is the assisted dying bill. Now you might have heard of one particular term, I'm very sure about it, which is euthanasia. Now, there are certain kind of misconception that this assisted dying is equivalent to euthanasia, but there is a specific difference between two. What is assisted dying? Now somebody is assisting you to die. If you are a terminally ill person, if you are a person who do not want to live further, and if there are certain conditions that you are going to die. For example, in this particular case, 6 months ke andar, if the doctors are prescribing that there will be no more life move beyond 6 months, in that particular case, if you want to die with dignity, there should be certain kind of opportunity as per the propagator or those who want this kind of bill, right? So basically what they wanted, there should be certain kind of prescription of drug or certain kind of injection, but that will not be administered by the doctor. The doctor will prescribe. You have to self-administer that. So when it comes to the assisted dying, it is you ultimately who are taking your life, not the doctor. But in the case of euthanasia, it is the doctor who is giving the some kind of maybe substance or certain kind of drug or maybe certain kind of injection. But euthanasia also are of two types. First is the active euthanasia. Now, in the active euthanasia, what I told you, that the doctor is administering something to you so that you will be no more alive. But there is another thing which is passive euthanasia, which is basically talking about that if you are on, let's say, ventilator or oxygen support system or any other kind of system which is preserving your life, and if by removing that particular support equipment, if the life is gone, in that particular case, that is the passive euthanasia. So you have to have idea about the differentiation of these terms, right? So basically this particular bill is about the assisted dying. So which is patient receives lethal drugs from the medical practitioner and self-administers them to end their own life. This is the key term related to assisted dying. Now what bill highlights, it allows terminally ill adults over 18 years. First condition is over 18 years, then who deemed to have less than 6 months to live to apply for the assisted death. So basically as per this bill, if you have less than 6 months and if you are above 18 years, then you can go for it. Next is the condition or the certain kind of conditionalities that should be there. So those patients who are choosing this, there should be that person should be of the competent mind. First thing is that person should be of competent mind. That means he or she is choosing for themselves. Then 2 doctors should prescribe, a psychiatrist should be there, a senior lawyer should be consulted, then the social worker who would need to sign off their decision. That means there is a rigorous process. Only after that it will be there. It's not like if you decide and that will be administered to you. No. Then there are several other jurisdictions. For example, some states in the United States of America, Switzerland, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Belgium, that already have certain kind of laws in place permitting the assisted dying. Now, what we had discussed previously, assisted dying versus euthanasia. This can be an ethical concern and there can be a question about this. So the differentiation should be clear. In the assisted dying, you yourselves are taking your life. It's not like the doctor is giving you drug. Doctor is prescribing you. Ultimately, you will be one who are going to take that particular drug or maybe the lethal injection. In the euthanasia, the doctor himself or herself will be giving or administering that particular drug. In the passive case, it will be removing certain kind of life support system. In the active euthanasia, they are going to administer that particular drug to you. So that is the difference between assisted dying versus euthanasia and also between the active and the passive euthanasia. Now, what are the key dilemmas or the ethical concerns associated? Now, just try to think that in majority of the parts of the world, many such people are not in a position to take the decision for their own. Yes or no? In the context of India also, if you see, there are many chances that the people may tend to go for that particular vulnerability in order to overcome certain kind of social condition, and that can utilize as a misuse of these kind of acts, right? So what are the ethical dilemmas? First is respect for the patient's dignity versus sanctity of life. Now see, the patient have a right to die with dignity. Patient knows that within 6 months that particular patient is going to get die, but then there may be cost associated with it. There may be certain kind of conditionality, certain kind of pain that is going through, or that particular person is going through already, right? So there is a right to die with dignity. But on the other hand, sanctity of life, because we are in a society where the religion also plays a very important role, where the ideas thought process plays a very important role. And when we are saying that the God has given us one life, in that particular case, taking that particular life by ourselves is against that particular will. So this is the first dilemma that you are going to face. Next is about the medical ethics conflict, because the doctors are being administered with the Hippocratic oath, where they are saying that they are not going to lose out upon if there are very slightest of the chance to save that particular patient. Now here in this particular case, doctor themselves are helping person to get die. Now in this particular case, it is the conflict with respect to the medical ethics itself, and that may lead to certain kind of further vulnerabilities also, right? Then risk of misuse. Now see, if the person comes from a low socio-economic background, now there may be a chance that for certain rupee, for maybe let's say for the organ transplant, or maybe for certain other kind of things, to overcome the kind of vulnerability that the family might be facing, there may be risk of misuse that will be very, very high in this particular case. So there have to be, even if at any point of time we do have this kind of will, there will have to be certain kind of stringent conditionality that should be there. Undermining the true voluntariness. Basically, it's not necessary that every time it will be voluntary in nature. There are many times you are being forced, maybe through the political pressure, through certain kind of other societal pressure. Let's say the person comes from the certain kind of differentially abled background, and then their societal pressure or the family pressure might be there to end the life. So there may be a lot of issues that are associated with. Next article is about China, Pakistan, and Bangladesh held their first trilateral meeting in Kunming, China. Now, this is not a very significant aspect, but yet very significant aspect. Why? First thing, that India is not party of this, so directly we are not involved. But since all three are our neighbor, and with them we do have certain adverse relation. For example, with China, we do have the border conflicts. We do have different other kind of conflicts. We do have the history of war. With respect to Pakistan, recently we had seen in the form of Operation Sindoor, right? And with respect to Bangladesh, till the time period of Sheikh Hasina, the things were going on comparatively in a decent manner. But after her exile, there are a lot of issues that have been emerged. There was a rise of the fundamentalist elements also. And now these three are combining in order to undermine certain kind of sovereignty related aspects to China. You might have also heard certain kind of statements that were published in the newspaper, for example, with respect to the chicken snack corridor, or with respect to certain kind of aspects of the Bay of Bengal, which undermines or which tend to pose certain kind of security threat for the India, and ask India to remain vigilant with respect to any such kind of meetings, even if they are going on, right? Now, what is this? Basically, what China is doing, China is trying to encircle India. Now, through the ocean route, China is encircling through the string of pearls policy. We will discuss about that also. But on the land route, basically, India has certain neighbors, right? What China is trying to do, China is trying to keep India engaged within its neighborhood, so that India should not be able to grow at the large scale. This is the kind of strategy of China. Now, in this case, what China is doing, there was previous meeting with respect to China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. And now what China is doing, China has incorporated Bangladesh. So this is the second trilateral of China. Now, what China is doing through this, China is trying to collaborate with the like-minded countries in order to pose certain instability near India, right? Now, what are the key concerns associated with these kind of meetings for India, where we are not party, but we should remain vigilant with respect to these kind of things. The first is the expansion of the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, what is Belt and Road Initiative? Belt and Road Initiative was started by China in 2013 in order to develop the infrastructure. So it comes with two specific strategies. First is the Silk Road Economic Belt, which is the belt part of this, and then the new Maritime Silk Road, which is the road part. Now, the Silk Road Economic Belt goes through overland, which includes the area of the Central Asia and then connecting to the Europe. And the new Maritime Silk Road is the maritime navigation path, which is basically encircling, also trying to encircle India through the string of pearls strategy. Now, what China is doing, China is trying to keep India's neighbor within the Belt and Road Initiative so that it will keep India engaged with them. It will try to pose certain kind of threat from the side of India's neighbors towards India. Now, the CPEC, you might have heard of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which passes through the disputed territory, which is right now under the administration of Pakistan, but it is the India's sovereign land, right? The Gilgit-Baltistan region. So basically, India ka main concern ye tha ki if there is certain kind of project going through the India's sovereign part right now, not under the India's control, under the administration of Pakistan, but that too is the part of India, and hence India had not joined this. But now what China is doing, China is trying to encircle through incorporation of different countries in this. So both Pakistan and Bangladesh are part of it, right? Now, expansion of the string of pearls policy. Now, China is trying to develop a lot of port. So basically, you can see over here, there are ports like Kukfayu port is there. Now, Chittagong in Bangladesh is right now not a military port, but that particular port was supported by China. There may be a chance that tomorrow that can become a port which will be holding the Chinese defense. In that particular case, it will be posing a threat to India, right? Then apart from that, there is Hambantota port is there. Even in the Maldives, China have presence. Even in Djibouti, China has presence. Even in the Gwadar port, Pakistan, China has presence. So China is trying to encircle India through its string of pearls policy. Now, how India is responding to that? India is responding through the necklace of diamond strategy by creating certain counterport. For example, we have created Sitwe. We are trying to develop the Kaladan multimodal project where the Sitwe will be the major hub. Then previous regime mein, with respect to Bangladesh also, we were trying to ensure connectivity. Here, this particular region had the BIMSTEC, which is the Bay of Bengal initiative for multi-sectoral, technological and economic cooperation, right? With respect to Sri Lanka, Kanakesenthurai port is there. With respect to Maldives also, right now in this regime, the relations are going ups and down, but yes, we do have a decent relationship. Then in the Mauritius, with respect to Assumption Island in the Seychelles, we do have the presence of the Indian forces, right? Then in the Oman, there is Dakkam port, there is Chabahar in the Iran region, right? Here in the Southeast Asia also, we do have the Changi naval base, we do have the Sabang port. So these are the presence of India in these particular regions, which is countering the string of pearls policy. Next is about the parallel regionalism. So what I have discussed, that there is BIMSTEC, which is India-led initiative basically in order to ensure the Bay of Bengal regionalism. Now what China is trying to do, China is trying to break that regionalism and try to build their own regional grouping, because China is not part of BIMSTEC, right? So China is trying to take the country which are the major player in the BIMSTEC against the India, right? So they are creating the parallel regionalism. Then erosion of the India's neighborhood first policy. Now in 2008, the policy was started in the form of the neighborhood first policy that was furthered in 2014 by inviting the SAARC members ke jo prime minister and presidents the to the swearing in ceremony. That was furthered, but now what China is doing, China is trying to detach the India's neighbors from it. So even if it is about the kind of failure of SAARC, because from 2014 onwards, there was no meeting or any other kind of groupings that is not able to function properly because of the Chinese presence. The aspect is the China, or the main anchor in this region to counter India is China. Right. Now see, if we have to talk about now what India should do. So basically, India should also try to plug upon the gaps that are there with respect to infrastructural development. For example, we do have a lot of developmental projects, but the issue is that there will be commitment that comes first and the kind of delivery that delays a lot. So India have to plug that particular gap. India have to go by the big brother attitude को शेड करते हुए इंडिया हैव टू गो बाय कंपैरेटिवली मोर रीजनल हार्मनी क्रिएट करना चाहिए, एंड इन ऑर्डर टू इंश्योर दैट पर्टिकुलर थिंग इंडिया शुड go by the what we say as the Gujarat doctrine ki certain kind of concession we have to give, but if that is contrary to the India's national security, then we should also not compromise upon those particular things. Okay, so these things can be the India's strategy. Last article in the main article is the ADR report, which is related to the political financing in India, rising cost and falling transparency. This is basically a report, that kind of data that the ADR, which is the Association for the Democratic Reforms, have highlighted. So what is this? Basically, there are certain observations that ADR have made. There have been delays from 1 day to 232 days after the 2024 general election in submitting the election expenditure. So once the elections are done, within the 90 days for the general elections like the parliamentary elections, and 75 days for the assembly election, post election you have to submit, you means as a political party you have to submit the report of the election expenditure कि कितना आपने खर्चा किया. Now what kind of aspects are being highlighted by ADR? That there have been the serious issues that are being highlighted, because majority of the political parties are not submitting those kind of expenses within the prescribed time. And what kind of issues it is going to create? There are issues with respect to the transparency of the elections and also the accountability of the political party. It's not about only one political party. Each and every political party in India faces these kind of issues, and the entire electoral system faces this kind of issues because of lack of transparency. So what are the issues that are being highlighted? First is the expensive election. Why we have to talk a lot about the money in the election? Because Indian election, if we talk about the 2014 Lok Sabha 2024 Lok Sabha election, 1.35 lakh crore was used. This gives an idea about the extent from the monetary perspective, what is the volume of the Indian election. So if this much money is involved and basically prescribed money is very, very less, so there have to be a regular check about what kind of loopholes are being utilized. Next is about the lack of transparency. So basically, as per the report, it says that the undisclosed sources from 2004-5 to 22-23, the 60% contributions are being received by the 6 major political parties. Matlab, total contribution ka 60% comes from the undisclosed sources. Matlab, you do not have any kind of idea about who is funding. So basically, the 60% contribution comes from the undisclosed sources. Next is about disparity in the political funding. So there are two type of parties. Multiple ho sakte hain, but basically the national party's designation, then the state party designation, then the other parties, right? So basically in that particular case, national party has 93% of funding, but in the regions or in different states, there are state parties also. In that particular case, 93% funding is coming to the central party. That means a kind of dominance of the national parties over the state parties. This is also harmful for the democracy, right? Electoral overspending, because ECI have kept the limit, but the limit is on the candidates. The limit is not on the political parties. So the limit on the candidate is 95 lakh for the Lok Sabha candidate and the 40 lakh for the assembly. But again, mind it, this is for the candidate. Parties can spend on behalf of the candidate a lot. So that is different, and that have to be brought in this particular ambit. Now, wealth is a key factor, because majority of the cases it was observed that if you are a wealthy person, if you have the money influence or the monetary influence over the process, there are very high chances to come to the election. As it was previously highlighted by same ADR only, that if you are from the criminal background, there are very high chances that you can come to the politics, right? So the money, criminalization, all these things are related to the politics. Now, what are the recommendations they are providing? First, cap on the expenditure even of the political parties. That means not only on the candidates, because candidates are spending, there is a limit. But what about political parties? They are spending a lot. Then the state funding of election. Basically, there should be a pool of fund that have to be created, and each and every candidate have to be provided equal amount of fund, and that will be reducing any kind of disparity or the economic disadvantage. So Indrajit Gupta committee have recommended that particular thing. Now these recommendations can, as it is being utilized in a question that is asking about what kind of electoral reform can be done in the Indian electoral process in order to make it further comprehensive. Then reduce the use of black money. So expenditure should be limited to the check, DD, RTGS, for which we do have certain kind of accountability and accounting mechanism. Lastly, monitor the party expenditure, which we have discussed in the first pointer. All donor detail must be publicly disclosed so that pata to chale ki who is funding for whom. And that is good for the democracy only, right? Now, having discussed about the important main news, let's discuss the other news which was also in news section. We'll discuss them briefly, right? So the first news in this was about the coffee. So India's coffee exports have jumped from about 125% to United States dollar 1.8 billion in last 11 years, right? So basically that brings coffee into picture. Now, there are certain kind of questions upon coffee that can be asked in the prelims examination, even maybe in the mains examination about certain commercial crops. So there are certain climatic conditions that are needed. So it is a tropical plant, right? So it found in the mainly in the tropical regions. Annual rainfall is needed, which is 150 to 300 centimeter. Now there are many varieties of coffee, but two are more prominent, which is basically Arabica and Robusta. And if we talk about the kind of percentage composition, so Arabica is basically roughly 70 to 75% production of the entire coffee. When it comes to Robusta, it's 20 to 25%. So roughly बहुत minor level पर other variety of coffee is being produced. So the temperature range for the coffee, which is Arabica, is from 15 to 24 degree, comparatively lesser, and 24 to 30 degrees for the Robusta. And that's why different region में different type of coffee is grown. Now, which are the key producer? Because there may be some question UPSC had asked previously also. So the world largest producer is Brazil. India में state wise देखा जाए, if we see from the state wise perspective, Karnataka, then Kerala, and then Tamil Nadu. And the major region, if region wise we talk about, it is the western and the eastern Ghat region, which provides the suitable climatic condition for the production of coffee. The next article is about the Subarnarekha river flash floods in Balasore. So basically, what is flash flood is comparatively more important. Sometimes what happens that when the rainfall is there, which is more than or beyond the capacity of that particular catchment region, or maybe the region where the rain is falling, to capture that particular water flow, and in that particular situation it creates some chaos, it causes the flash floods. So recently in many such urban cities, you might be seeing the news when there are irregular rainfall. Sometime when the rainfall is there, it creates certain urban floods or the flash floods, because within a short span of time a lot of rainfall can be observed. So this is with respect to the Balasore and the Swarnarekha river. So now when the Swarnarekha river was there in news, let's discuss briefly about this particular river. So the origin of this river is in Piska village, which is close to Ranchi in the Jharkhand. So Jharkhand is the originating place. Now UPSC has the tendency to ask about the river, that which is the right bank tributary, which is the left bank tributary, which is the origination place. But that is mainly belonging to the major rivers. For comparatively smaller rivers, they are generally interested in from where they start, which particular states they flow, and where the mouth is being formed, like where they are meeting the sea or ocean, or whether they are inland river, right? So the basin region is Jharkhand, Odisha, and West Bengal. The mouth is in the Bay of Bengal, that this flows in the Bay of Bengal region. The principal tributaries includes Kanchi, Karkari, and the Karkai. Right, these are the prominent tributaries of, that means they are contributing their water to this Subarnarekha river. Now Hundru Fall is located on it, right? And the National Waterway 96 is on this particular river. So as per the National Waterways Act, there are many national waterways are being designated. Previously it used to be 5, and then it increased substantially after this particular act. So it is lying on 96 and NW 96. Next article is about Digital Markets Act, right? So basically what the context of this particular act, why we have to discuss about this, is Google, Alphabet is the parent company of Google, has proposed the changes in its search results in order to comply with the European Union's Digital Markets Act. Now, one peculiar thing about the search engines you might have observed, that sometimes they show the result which is basically favorable to them. Don't you think so? Because they have access to a lot of data, and in manipulating that particular thing, they can index something at the upper level so that you will see some things on the upside in the feeds, right? And the tendency is more to scroll those particular websites, right? So this is against the neutrality of the platform, whether it is social media, whether it is the search engine, right? So they have to show all the things equally, or there should be certain kind of indexing that should be done on the rational basis. So what Google is doing, Google is changing its system to comply with the European Union's Digital Markets Act. Now, what is this Digital Markets Act of 2022? It talks about the fair platform utilizations. Means you cannot favor certain websites over other irrationally. There may be certain kind of discriminatory thing based upon maybe some kind of like data, certain kind of other feeds, but irrationally wo nahi ho sakta hai, and that fair platform should be provided. And they are saying in the Digital Market Act, as these platforms are the gatekeepers, means they are basically keeping all the traffic towards that particular platform. So now what they have to do, they have to ensure the equal access to all the kind of websites or all the kind of search results without doing any kind of discrimination. Now, what are the gatekeepers? They are the online search engines. They can be app stores. They can be the messenger service. Basically, they should not be providing certain kind of discrimination or biased result, what we can say, right? What consumer benefit will be there? So consumer is going to get the neutral advice. Otherwise, there will be certain kind of manipulated or a kind of advice that this particular search engine is going to provide you, which can be fed into that particular system in order to promote some discrimination. Now the user or the consumer can get benefited from this. They can get the better service, multiple service from which they can choose. There will be more opportunity, direct access to services, and also the fairer prices. Because otherwise, how they are showing the discriminatory thing, they might be taking some money. So now they are going to get the fair prices, right? Next article with respect to also in news is the CAT-RATE, which is the Camera Trap Data Repository and the Analysis Tool. Now, basically, what is this CAT-RATE? It is basically a kind of camera trapping in order to finding the population. So I hope that you might have heard of this particular term, M-Stripes, which is monitoring system for tiger intensive protection and the ecological status. This is basically the technology which is based upon the geotagging, which is based upon the GPS radio collar, which is being utilized in order to count the tiger population, right? So this camera trapping is similar kind of aspects of the M-Stripe. So different species ke liye different kind of techniques are being utilized. So what wildlife scientists have highlighted, that there is a utility of the CAT-RATE to identify the Himalayan snow leopard. Now there is a camouflage that creates certain kind of issues. So that camera trapping can provide certain kind of added advantage over the manual looking for these particular species. So what is CAT-RATE? It is the automated segregation of the camera trap photographs of the species using the artificial intelligence and the neural network model. So what previously used to be done manually, now it is being done through the artificial intelligence and certain kind of neural network model that will be helping to get certain species number from the kind of captured pictures, right? Now other technologies that are being used for the big cats, tigers के लिए M-Stripes. For the lion, there is AI-driven systems like Simba, which is being utilized by the government of Gujarat. Then eGuj Forest, which is basically a kind of mobile app that is helping in order to calculate or finding the number of lions, right? The alert generation system, etc. These are certain alternative techniques. See, no need to remember all these kind of things, but the point is that if anything is there in news, for example, this time CAT-RATE, so that is comparatively more important, because UPSC can give you directly CAT-RATE and there will be 4 options in the line explaining the meaning of that, and one will be the correct one. Now, since this particular article talks about snow leopard, so there should be an idea about what is the IUCN status of snow leopard, right? So as per the IUCN data, it is vulnerable, right? So for the major species which remains in the news, you should have certain kind of idea about what is their IUCN status, right? UPSC keeps on asking that. Then there is next article which is about the e-Rakta Kosh. Now basically the context of this is the Ministry of Health is planning to integrate the country's rare donor registry with the e-Rakta Kosh. What is the rare blood donor registry? So there is a National Institute of Immunohematology. right? So basically this is based in Mumbai. So this is having or hosting the registry of the rare blood. Now rare bloods kaun se hote hain? Those particular bloods where comparatively more need for transfusion will be there, and that too will be in the a higher frequency. Now in that particular case there will be more need for blood, so these particular bloods will be available in this blood donor registry, right? So what is e-Raktakosh? E-Raktakosh was started in 2016. It is an online blood bank management system under the National Health Mission. It provides information about the blood banks, blood availability, blood donation camp, etc. And there are certain acts and the rules that it is enforcing: Drug and Cosmetics Act, also the National Blood Policy Standards and the guidelines. So these are being enforced by the e-Raktakosh, which is basically holding the repository, which is talking about the information about blood bank, blood availability, etc. And this rare blood donor registry is being hosted by National Institute of Immunohematology, right? Now, next article is about Guada negative. What is this Guada negative? So there was a French woman in the Caribbean island of Guadeloupe has been identified with a carrier of a new blood type. So can you imagine that single woman with a identified new blood type, which is dubbed as the Guada negative. So basically these blood types are being differentiated on different factors, right? So this Guada negative is a negative blood group system. Now there is a specific aspect that UPSC can also focus upon, that there is an absence of the EMM antigen. What is this? Basically, this is a high incidence antigen. Now, generally in almost all the blood groups, this particular antigen is observed. In almost all, not in all, right? So basically in this Guada negative, there is the absence of this EMM antigen, which makes it different from different other kind of blood groups, right? So this is the categorized as the 48th blood group system in the world. Now, some specific thing only that can be asked, no need to go into a lot of details into this. If there are further developments, then only you can go. Next article that we are going to discuss is the Sculptor Galaxy NGC 253. So this particular galaxy is also known as the Silver Coin Galaxy, right? Now, basically when it comes to the galaxy, if there are certain kind of differentiation with respect to shape, or if there are any significant new discovery with respect to that, then only that will be a lot important. Otherwise, just refer to that what is the shape of that particular galaxy, that's it, because they are too far or too distant objects, right? For example, in the case of this Silver Coin Galaxy or the Sculptor Galaxy, it is roughly 7.5 million light years away from the Earth. So 1 light year is the kind of distance which light travels within 1 year. Now you can assume 7.5 million light year is it's too far distance, right? Now the shape, size, mass is similar to the Milky Way galaxy. Now they are the barred spirals, which are basically the ribbons of the stars, gas, dust that cut across their center. Matlab, you might have seen that particular disc shape wala galaxies. It is somewhat similar to that particular galaxy only. Okay. Next article that we have to discuss is with respect to nano fertilizer. So the context is Indian Farmers Fertilizer Cooperative Limited, IFCO, to set up its first overseas nano fertilizer plant in Brazil, right? So basically the concept of nano fertilizer is important. So just assume a kind of fertilizer where you are not applying the entire fertilizer at the very first instance. What you are doing, it's a kind of capsule. So there is an outer layer, and that particular capsule gradually dissolve very slowly, that particular thing will be made available to the plant. First thing, it will help that there will be no excess of fertilizer at the first instance, and it will provide the long-term availability of the fertilizer, and through fertilizer, the availability of the macro and the micronutrient. So basically, nano fertilizer kya hote hain? They are the encapsulated or the coated with the nano material, which is at the nano scale, right? They are with the controlled release and the subsequent slow diffusion into the soil. So basically, there will be a controlled release very slowly, and apart from that, there will be slow diffusion, gradually there will be diffusion, so that the fertilizer ka impact will be for a longer period of time. What the benefit will be? The benefits are in the form of promoting the sustainable farming, because one such issue with respect to farming was excessive utilization of fertilizer, which is creating issues with respect to more usage of maybe the NPK, all of these things, right? So basically it is reducing that particular thing, and apart from that, the cost effectiveness, because small fertilizer ka amount will be available for a longer period of time, right? The last article for today is the International Day of Yoga. So basically, on the suggestions of India, in 2014, the United Nations proclaimed 21st June as the International Day of Yoga by the UNGA resolution 69 by 131. No need to remember this resolution ka number, but yes, 2014 mein the International Yoga Day was recognized. Now, the theme of this particular year was Yoga for One Earth, One Health, right? And this was the 11th edition. Now there are certain important aspects, because from the perspective of art and culture, from the lifestyle perspective, yoga is become very, very important. So basically this word comes from the Sanskrit root word yuj, which means the union of mind and body. When you do basically yoga, basically you are trying to control all your senses, and then you are trying to unify them into one. Now with respect to yoga, Maharshi Patanjali was one of the propounder of yoga, and in the Yoga Sutra, he talked about the 8 limbs of yoga, right? Now, recently, there have been the UNESCO's inscription of yoga into the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Now, see, UPSC had previous years also asked the question about the intangible cultural heritage. In 2024, they had asked question about Garba, which got inscribed in 2023. So basically, as and when there have been any kind of inclusion into the list of the intangible cultural heritage or maybe the world heritage site, those things can become very, very important. For example, when Hoysala temple architecture got included, there was question about this. When Garba got included, there was question about it. So basically there can be a question if there is these kind of events. So you have to have an awareness about these things from the examination perspective. Micro pointers have to be noted down in a thematic manner, right? So with this, we have completed the entire set of discussion that have to be done from my side. Now there is the digital current affairs portal on the Vision IAS website. There MCQs are available based upon today's news today, right? So basically what you have to do, if you have attended this particular lecture, if you have gone through the news today document, then it is the right time to practice that particular thing through the digital current affairs portal. There will be MCQs, there will be subjective question that you have to attempt in order to assess that whether you are on track with respect to current affairs or whether there are certain extra things that have to be done. So it is providing all the kind of facilities with respect to the current affairs. So just once navigate that in order to excel in the current affairs preparation. I hope that whatever we had discussed with respect to the today's news today edition, that was clear to you, and thank you very much for watching. And basically make sure that you utilize it, because it's not only about watching the news, it's about utilization of that for the actual examination. So try, utilize, practice and revise, and that particular thing will help you to excel in the UPSC civil services. Thank you.